So, welcome to our final discussion in the series Resilient Lincolnshire Global. We brought you three themes to now, looking at sort of leadership through the lens of resilience, emotional, and responsible themes there. And we want to finish off today by looking at leadership through the technology lens. So Resilient Lincolnshire Global has evolved through our sort of earlier discussions in the year with our sort of local business community, and as a result of the pandemic, providing support by sharing the expert views of our panelists who have come in from in the form of sort of academics, students, and of course industry and business leaders. Now, all of these have been in association with the Centre of our organisational Centre of Organisational Resilience there. From these sort of rich discussions, a number of themes naturally sort of surfaced. We're talking to our sort of leaders and academics, and then it was about identifying what really mattered to leaders and what the issues they were trying to understand and get to grips with. And this is where our sort of four themes effectively emerge from. So the resilient leadership, emotional leadership, responsible leadership, and obviously today's a sort of discussion around technological leadership. And this was a natural step for us to sort of take these conversations from a very local to global level and sort of tap into a much broader insight and knowledge of leaders and academics worldwide. So it's been an honor to sort of host our guests from around the world and engage with such established and esteemed experts in their respective areas, which has led to some fantastic discussions over the last three weeks or so, which you can all view on our Resilient Lincolnshire and Resilient Lincolnshire Global discussions on our YouTube channel or our Facebook platform, or visit our website to be able to catch up on there. All right, so today we have another great panel to discuss leadership through the technology lens. And so our anchor for today is Chris Headland, which I shall pop up on the screen here. Morning, Chris. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. And Chris is the associate professor in computer science at the University of Lincoln. And Chris, this is a subject which leaders cannot ignore and is instrumental really in the way we shape the world, if I can put it in that way.
Absolutely right. I mean, everything's, even if something doesn't feel digital, there's probably a digital process involved in the pipeline somewhere. It's just unavoidable now.
Yeah, no, absolutely, totally agree. So without further ado, Chris, I'm going to disappear and I'm going to leave it to you, put it in your safe hands, so there for you to introduce our panelists. So, and I'll see you at the end.
Cheers. So yeah, thank you to the Lincoln International Business School for trusting me and my safe hands to host this one. So I've got an absolutely excellent panel with me today, who I'm going to invite in and ask them to introduce themselves. So we're going to start with Genevive Manol. Hi, Genevieve. Would you like to unmute and introduce yourself?
There we go. Good morning, everybody. Morning, Chris. Thank you for the opportunity. So my name is Genevive Manol, and I look after IT and business intelligence for Supplier, the African region. My passion is data, and I'm very excited to share some of my experiences and knowledge with you today, and also to learn from the other experts we have on the panel.
Brilliant, thank you. And next up, we have Roman Lubis.
Morning, Chris. Happy to be here. Absolutely excited to be in this conversation. I'm an agile coach, consultant, and trainer, and I work with big enterprises who are looking for ways to increase their agility and be more competitive.
Nice to have you with us. And next up, Professor Charmin Hartel.
Hello, everyone. I'm also delighted to be here. I am a professor of management at Monash University in Melbourne, Australia. I am leading a new initiative that looks at the intersection of organizational behavior and digital technologies. And I'm really excited to both share some of the things that we're looking at, as well as to learn from the other experts on the panel.
Brilliant, thank you. And Muthu Kumar.
Hi, good morning, Chris, and good morning, everyone. My name is Muthu Kumar, and I work for Juniper Networks. It's a networking company headquartered in California, but I work out of the Bangalore office in India. I'm a VP of engineering. I also run the operations in India. We have nearly about 3,000 plus employees here working for the global organization. And I'm super happy to be here to share some perspectives from an industry perspective. Thank you.
Cheers. It's great to have you. And last but by no means least, my colleague from the Computer Science School, Dr. Derek Foster.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. So I'm an associate professor with a background in computer science, and more specifically, my expertise lies in cloud computing and IoT. Currently, I'm working with the major cloud vendors around developing some cutting-edge computing curricula in higher education, and this is really to enhance student employability and give them the opportunity to learn industry transferable skills. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Derek. So I think that brings us on to the first thing I'd like to talk about, which is this idea of technology-supported home working. Now, clearly, this is something that's going to have impacted all of you recently, especially with the current global situations we find ourselves in. But I'd like to start with Derek. So, Derek, especially with the first lockdown, a lot of students had to very rapidly transition online, and a lot of academics who are used to the academic environment, being at university, having their office, suddenly found themselves working at home, delivering lectures online. How did you find that process?
Yeah, as a computer scientist, I think we had it a bit easier than other departments because I wouldn't say we're digital natives, but we've certainly got our hands around developing these types of services. So in our school, we flipped quite quickly to an online learning environment using Teams, Blackboard Collaborate, amongst other services. And our students had a relatively smooth transition in moving on to those services. It wasn't without its problems, the usual teething issues, but we did flip very quickly, and our students quickly discovered different ways of interacting with the lecturers and their academics. And for the most part, the students really enjoyed it. Brilliant.
And how do you find that from that initial pivot, the kind of jarring, the kind of the rapid, how would you find things have changed over time? Yeah, so computer science is very practical. We're an applied school of computer science, so it was the most challenging part really was the tangible aspects, being able to sit with a student, work through the problem, the computer's in front of you, the keyboard, doing the coding together, peer coding, and having that taken away very quickly was a real challenge. And looking at how the digital services such as Teams and Blackboard Collaborate can sort of mimic that environment that academics and the students were so used to for years and years. So that was a real jarring experience, moving from that physical, tangible experience and trying to substitute it and mimic it through a digital service instead. And it took maybe about a month or so to actually finesse that experience. But the students were fully supported all the way through. They understood the challenges and they worked with academics around different ways of using these services. So it wasn't just the lecturers and academics actually being innovative. The students were innovative too around using these services. So we worked together. Brilliant. And I suppose a lot of that is around kind of being agile in how you work. And that actually brings me over really nicely to Roman. So how has that agility, that business agility played out in this initial move online?
I think the COVID has bring an immense impact on life of big corporations and small firms that are doing software development and business in general. So there's been a huge demand for video collaboration software, all sort of software that can support like graphic design or visual collaboration like Miro or Mural boards. So these days, what I see with the teams I've been working with is, of course, first of all, there was a kind of the first moment was a challenge to bring people into this virtual space, because everybody got used to working in their office spaces where they had some sort of collaboration using Jabber, Skype, whatever tools, but it was not the default mode of doing things. And of course, at the first months of COVID, that was absolutely difficult to get on the rails of productive way of working. And interesting that apparently what we see right now, that impact, it shifted the way how we work, that before we had commute time as a divider between rest and work. So nowadays people tend to work even more. And that probably does not something that's visible. And that's why I observe a lot of burnouts, and actually something that in agility we call non-sustainable pace of development. So that brought challenges that we never experienced before.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's one thing I suppose I never expected to miss was the commute, right? There is this common kind of mental jump, right? You're leaving home and you're giving your mind a little bit of time to get ready for the kind of challenge of the work environment, and switch off. Something that really struck me the other day is I have no idea what's in the music charts at the moment, because I recognise I was only actually listening to music when I was driving to work. And that takes me over really nicely to Shaman, actually. So we were talking about this idea of burnout and resiliency and how we support that. Now, with your work around kind of people management, what do you find the impact of that has been?
So it's definitely a mixed situation for some individuals. It has actually been a real improvement for their well-being. There are and sometimes people overlook this. There is a considerable segment of the population that finds traditional workplaces very stressful, and working in the online environment and being able to perhaps reduce some of the sort of social interaction can be a very positive thing for their well-being. So one of the things that we find that research shows is that introverts tend to do better in this sort of working in the online environment, for example, than do extroverts, who really get a lot of energy from the social contact. And so the well-being impacts are definitely differential, with some positive, some negative. I think one of the things that's been really interesting is also to see that with the pandemic, in many ways, a lot of organizations have become more conscious about the need to pay attention to the well-being of their staff, where in, pre-COVID, it was often taken for granted that, people were okay unless they came and said something. It was sort of assumed. But one of the things that we certainly have seen, which I think is a positive change in workplaces, is a real attention to thinking about well-being, managing issues such as whether it's burnout or making sure people feel that they have the support and the connection.
Oh, brilliant. So, and on that kind of thing, then Muthu, obviously you work with a huge number of colleagues. How does how has tech then enabled them to work together? Because obviously, in our when we're kind of co-located, it's one thing. You have these kind of you bump into people in a corridor. You have these little kind of water cooler chats. How have you found that change moving online? So going from kind of Shaman's kind of point, we used to have to ask people how they're doing, but we did that kind of, I used to find that I was getting asked a lot. Somebody saw me in the corridor or out for a coffee. It was, oh, how are you doing? And at least I had an opportunity to say that. But I found that I've missed that those kind of random interactions. And how have you found that in a company as large as yours?
It's a very difficult situation. I get a lot of energy meeting people, walking down the corridors, going to the breakout areas, getting on town hall meetings. There's constant feedback that's coming in, right, all the time, and so you are able to get your quarters right with the constant feedback that's coming in real time. And you have to get all of that in the online virtual world today, right? So we had to invest quite a bit of money in ensuring that we have, a scalable VPN infrastructure, a scalable cloud-based collaboration software, associated cybersecurity, endpoint security software. So a lot of investments happened during the COVID times, and even before that, we've been preparing for getting to talent in different places in the country, even globally. We encourage our employees to use the virtual whiteboards. A lot of our meetings are whiteboard based. People usually have a tendency to go use the board, walk up to the front, take a marker, draw the pictures on the board and have conversations. And we're trying to get that in our collaboration software, right? It is working. It's not that straightforward, but it is working. We encourage our people to turn on the video. We ensure that everybody has at least a 10 Mbps connection at home, and their network connectivity is good. And then with all of these investments in infrastructure, getting our labs running 24/7, getting our data centers running 24/7, we are seeing people are getting adjusted to this new way of working. And we also see productivity improvements, right? Bangalore has really harsh traffic conditions, right? And people do save at least 2 to 4 hours of commute time.
Wow, that's that's much worse traffic than we get in Lincoln. So Genevieve, you must have similar challenges again for a large organisation. How do you find that collaboration working?
I think we've done something similar at Supplier. We're also using Microsoft Teams. There's definitely an added focus from the leadership team also to get the teams to collaborate. We've got these collaboration groups. We make sure that we have connection groups. I mean, we've just come out of a leadership week to make sure that people are all connected. And I think going into the new world, this is going to become the future, where your office space will become a collaboration space, where it's more of people coming together with the design thinking, as opposed to just the traditional bums on seats type of capability that we're using our real estate for currently. We've got a lot of focus in our organization as well with our HR team. I mean, we had really fun things where we had cooking classes just to break the monotony. We had some chefs, during lunch times, everyone would dial in and the chef would cook with us. And then at the end of the day, we had fitness classes where someone actually did a live Zumba class with us, So I think our organization has spent a lot of time really making sure that while you're at home, you are also balanced in terms of the time that you're spending with your family and the time that you're spending on work, because we are working a lot more hours, even though we're not commuting that much. So I think that's going to change. And the burnout is something that's real, and I think that's something that we need to start focusing on. How are we going to get people to switch off? Because your office is now home as well, so to make that disconnect is the challenge.
I had that exactly myself not too long ago. I booked some time off, and I was trying to explain to somebody that actually, that just meant moving from this room in my house to a slightly different room in my house, and I still have to come in here because this is where all my cool stuff is. So it's quite hard to escape the office now. And I think that there's this kind of theme coming up around change and the impact tech is having. Obviously, Muthu mentioned the way that collaboration is changing and the way that that's kind of impacting the office. And I'm really kind of interested in some of the things that Roman's going on about agility. So I'm curious, what would you say, and actually we'll start on Muthu for this, what would you say is the most significant impact tech is having on your field right now?
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay,
so
cool.
I'm in the pharma space, and our industry is very highly regulated, which regulation means lots of documentation, lots of admin. And before I get into maybe the things that I think is going to add so much value, I want to add that technology is there to augment the human capability. It's not there to replace it. And I think the fear of technology is something that keeps people from trying to adopt it. And one of the things that we definitely feel will add value and is adding value in the pharma space is, for example, our dossiers. When we start with a product, it has to go through a really lengthy process, but it's reams and reams of reports and data and research that needs to be read. So with the machine learning text analytics capability, you can actually have that done a lot shorter, in shorter periods. So you can get the output of the documentation, the salient points, and you can actually make your decision of those products a lot sooner. Another big part, our role is to get into the market sooner and to help patients. Our culture at Supplier is human care and caring for life. And what we always say is we need to make sure that the product gets to the patient, to the cancer patient, to the HIV patient a lot sooner. And outside of making sure that those dossiers are signed off and make sure that it's passed, when that product finally gets into supply chain, there's a lot of the robotics capability you can start bringing in there. So use humans for what they are good at, which is the softer side, the engagement, the people element, and let the machines do the repetitive tasks of going to pick items at that storage location or at that storage location. So these are also things that we can start using a lot quicker. And then maybe the last one is blockchain. I think people are very scared about blockchain and security and things like that. And it is something that you have to be cautious about in some areas or some industries. But I think where we're trying to have this patient community where they're sharing experiences, we could start sharing that information through blockchain. And that's one of the things that I'm very excited about for our industry. So yeah, exciting times ahead, and definitely ways that we can use the strengths of humans as well as technology for the better for our future.
So Derek, I with everything that Genevieve just said then around kind of these infrastructure and cloud-based systems and machine learning, obviously you're doing quite a lot of work with some of the big blue chip cloud vendors. How are you seeing them adapt and them change? What's coming forward in the sector?
Well, from my perspective, it's really focusing on the big skills that students need, especially computer science students. So we briefly spoke about things like machine learning there, text analytics, phrase extraction, sentiment analysis, difficult tasks for humans to do. So those services are getting really big now. On Azure, they're called cognitive services, and that's things like conversational AI, like text analytics, AI, machine learning. Those are the big areas at the minute, and cloud supports those. So machine learning and AI has been around for a long time, but it's only been in maybe the last 5 years or so where those services have went large scale and they're available on the cloud through endpoints. So you can train models really easily on the cloud now and then publish that endpoint for anybody to use. So that was unheard of not so long ago, and it's incredible the scale that you can get from that global scale. So we're teaching students how to build and train those models, how to deploy them, but also the infrastructure, and it's on the cloud. What does it look like? You've got your on-premise data center, and a cloud data center, it doesn't look that different. It's just bigger, but they've got to understand the virtualization of those resources, the abstraction of coding. It used to be you would write your code, host it on a server, but now you can use things like serverless computing, where it's abstracted away even further, and you just give the cloud your code and it will run it. You don't really care about the infrastructure at that point. So you're teaching students these whole different abstracted layers of computer science, and it's quite challenging for them to get to grips with that. We're no longer interested in the box that sits under the desk, the beige box with the hardware and all the rest of it. It's like we just want everything as a service now. And there's pros and cons to that, but the students are doing really well in picking it up, and industry really needs students with these cloud skills, especially for small businesses that are looking to migrate their current hosted services onto the cloud. Those are real challenges.
It is. I mean, it is quite a conceptual challenge to get your head around. When things happen in the cloud, it's what does that? When you start explaining, well, it's actually somebody else's computer. There is hardware behind that. But sometimes I genuinely think when we start talking, you see cloud computing discussed in the media. It's almost like it's just being beamed into the sky, and the data fairies are managing it from up top. We've just had a comment coming from the chat. One of our colleagues, Tracy, we are working a lot more, and if we had to commute, one could question if we could continue carrying the same workload. I think this is a really interesting question. I'm going to pass this over to Sharman in a second. Actually, it's interesting. I always kind of viewed my start and end of day as to when I left the house. I don't know if anyone else is the same on that. I got up at about 7. and I usually got home for about 6. And I saw that as my working day, not really when I sat at my desk, but when I left my home. And now I think mentally there's this kind of pressure. If I get up at 7, I clean my teeth and I kind of do my commute across the corridor, and I sit down and I start working. And I think I'm spending less time in rest and more time in work. And there has been more work to do. You know, we've had to adapt, we've had to change, we've had to push more things online. And our learning these new skills to adapt to work in this environment has come with a workload as well. I think it's really interesting to catch whether we can continue with this pace, whether this kind of amount of workload is going to be expected once the global situation changes again. Charmin, what's your position?
Well, I think that the problem that you're referring to already existed in our traditional workplaces, that there are, you know, many occupations where people were working far too much. And you know, we've had a whole research field around sort of work-life balance emerge in recognition of this problem of trying to manage the demands of work with also having a life. And additionally, the sort of growth of research as well as practice in the area of well-being demonstrates this as well, is that there's a real recognition that we are pushing, you know, kind of humans to their limit and trying to understand how we can essentially help people to maintain their well-being so that they can, you know, sustainably work and also have, you know, healthy lives outside of the workplace. I think that one of the things that will be evolving, and as I said, is I'm leading up a new initiative at Monash University called the Monash OB Tech Lab, and we're looking at this intersection of organizational behavior and digital technologies. And to me, one of the very exciting areas that we need to sort of you know, rapidly develop is using some of these digital technologies, integrating them more into the way that we work. And this way, in this way, we could actually be effectively monitoring a lot of aspects of individual sort of health and well-being, and help individuals sort of get those reminders of when they need to be taking various types of breaks and the like. So I think, you know, this is not a new issue. It's just one, again, that we're paying a lot more attention to, because we're sort of in this sort of environment that is kind of, people are thinking about these questions. I want to just throw in another kind of side to this about, which I think is really interesting, and I don't know what's happening in the other countries that are represented here. But here in Australia, you know, we have had a mass kind of migration from the cities to the regional areas. People are not expecting to go back to pre-COVID workplaces. They actually want to kind of get a bit of away from some of the way that we have set up our traditional workplaces. So I think, you know, I see a lot of opportunities, and yes, of course, we need to very carefully manage these, balance it with, you know, human flourishing, human well-being, opportunity for all. But I see more opportunity than I see, you know, drawbacks from our traditional ways of how we had traditionally worked.
That's interesting, actually. And Roman, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yes. So something that just struck me is that I remember there was a funny questionnaire with the question, so what triggered digital transformation in your organization? CTO, CIO, or COVID? And that's the moment. So when COVID arrived, actually what happened is that it speeded up digital transformations in many companies, and agility is the fuel for that digital transformation. And being here in Singapore, I've noticed that some of the professions, they are going to extinct because they're going to be replaced by sort of digital component. And the reason for that is quite obvious, because some of the restrictions like lockdown or social distancing, they actually speeded up the things, they make them inevitable. And something that I'd like to layer on what Sharmin just shared about the well-being at work and workplaces, and something that we probably not going to, and the reason why we probably not going to return to where we be before COVID time. So I think something what I observe in organizations I work with is that at this point of time, being in the pandemic for, I don't know, 9 months, for example, it's quite evident that there is some need for countermeasures to avoid mental fatigue and burnout at the workplaces. And some of my clients, they're quite conscious about that. So they implement no meeting days, or there are some other restrictions that people, they sort of like cannot work after business hours, so nobody can reach them out. So that's quite a solution. On the other hand, I think there is a necessary component for that is to educate leadership, because there is an expectation to deliver more, do more, and because we are under pressure. And that, of course, sort of creates a lot of anxiety and problems on the level of individual contributors. So, and it proliferates in all type of companies, so manufacturing, transportation, software development as well. So it's just been everywhere.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, I've just seen there's been another comment from Tracy, which I'll just put up on the screen for now. It's not new, but workload for some has increased. So if you have a 2-hour commute at both hours of the day, it's not going to be possible to carry that increase if you have to travel. So if we do have a 2-hour commute and we've naturally adopted 2 hours of additional working onto our time, obviously if there's that expectation maintains, and I think that's a really solid point, Tracy. I think, that obviously when we start adapting, I mean, there have been time, workload savings through going digital as well. I mean, it's a lot of, I'm certainly finding meetings more succinct. And I kind of hope that when we do move back into a face-to-face environment, we're going to carry some of these efficiencies with us. And that hopefully, I would like to hope that as a sector, as a global sector, we're going to work better, not more. But I think this is something as kind of advocates, we're all going to have to kind of keep our eye on and kind of hold people accountable, make sure those necessary changes happen. So there's been another question. They're coming in thick and fast, so I'll turn them around. Do you believe working online is sustainable in terms of managing productivity? I'm going to pass this one over to Muthu, if that's all right.
Yes, I think that's a great question. The new normal that we are discussing in our organization is not about getting back to the pre-COVID times. We are clearly looking at a hybrid model. There are people that are expected to come into the office because they maintain physical infrastructure, the labs, the data centers, the electrical infrastructure, and they perhaps will have to physically come into the office. But a large section of the organization can truly benefit from the efforts that we have put in to go online. It is working for us, so it's going to be a hybrid model. When there are important key project meetings, you can actually go reserve workspaces, come into the office. These are going to be dynamic, flexible workspaces, no assigned seating. You come in, use the workspace, get your meetings done, and you go back home, right? And we expect a significant number of people to work from home, even if we come out of this pandemic situation, right? That's the discussion that's going on, and that's the path or the direction that we are moving towards.
Brilliant. Okay, and Genevieve, do you have anything to add to that?
Just want to unmute myself. I agree. I like I was saying earlier, there's going to be this digital citizenship that's going to start growing, and the collaboration time is going to be thinking about ideas and gathering information. It's not necessarily going to be specifically for the meetings that we've been having over the last while. So the new normal, there's a lot of activities that can be done, and we found that people have become a lot more productive because they have the balance. They don't have the stress of worrying about their families, the kids. Although I know like the homeschooling has also been a bit of an issue, where you're not able to actually split between the kids running into the office and you're actually doing your meetings. But I think once we can get those niggles right, and once we can focus on the efficiencies, we'll definitely be able to have a much better, more effective workforce in the next while. We just need to try to slowly flatten almost the hierarchies and start focusing on people for their skills and what they're able to do, other than for us just to have, general get-togethers just for the sake of it.
Yeah, I mean that's fantastic. I mean, me personally, I mean, I've as Derek knows, who's unfortunate enough to have to share a lot of meetings with me. My newborn comes into a vast majority of my meetings, and you know what? I love that. It's I don't get me wrong. I'm quite careful about how I share images of him online and things like that. But in a meeting environment with colleagues who I know quite well, it's quite nice to see how everyone's face lights up when you bring in this. I mean, he was born right at the beginning of the first lockdown, so he's just over 8 months old now, and he'll sit here kind of playing with my microphone and things, and it's interesting how that has changed the environment, and it's changed the way I approach work as well. Knowing that I can have a meeting with my little boy sat on my knee, I've seen this whole kind of aspect of his life that I wouldn't have got to see. And he's had this kind of different experience. I'm not trying to look on the silver lining of a pandemic, but there's elements of going back into the office that I'm not in a rush to do, because I'm enjoying that bit of it. I'm enjoying this part of working online, that he can sit on my meetings and things like that. Now there's an interesting question coming in the chat from Stuart. Has the panel experienced increase in need and emphasis due to COVID on UX and UI in businesses, especially for business to consumer and internal company systems? Roman, this sounds like the kind of thing that you'd know about.
Yeah, and that's something that really resonates with me. So yes, I have experienced this, and I had an experience working with the company, the big retailer, and something that what happened during COVID times. Of course, they experienced huge demand for the beverages and food and everything. And of course, they tried to use this as an opportunity to enrich customer experience and make it better. So, and I witnessed a lot of experiments around improving on user experience and the way how people interact with the application. So everything could be done with an application that sits on your smartphone. So a lot of interesting things. Of course, it also brought some challenges, because all the things around UX UI, they should be validated with experiments, and as we don't have a real interaction with people, so it's very difficult to arrange focus groups or get in the real interaction with people to understand what they experience or be with them. That brought other sort of challenges, but I must admit and confirm that yes, that happened.
So there's been another chat comment come through from Tracy, and this is a reference to a point we were making earlier. Academics who resisted using technology very quickly embraced it and actually enjoy it. Now, this is absolutely true. So a colleague who I used to work with at another institution, I knew was very anti-tech, and actually had a somewhat of a hissy fit when somebody exchanged a chalkboard with a dry whiteboard, because that was just a step too far. I actually noticed on LinkedIn the other day that they were delivering a seminar on remote collaboration and things like this, and I think, wow, what a step change. I think this, we've seen this in quite a few places, right, where people are suddenly embracing stuff. Ruchi has also dropped in a comment of what relevant point educate leadership, and I think I think actually accidentally this is where this talk has ended up going, actually, that we need to keep kind of pushing these messages back to leadership, especially things around burnout, especially things about the working day, commuting, and well-being. And Charmin, I mean, you must spend your life educating leadership, right?
Yes, I think that interesting. Our Australian Human Resource Institute did a survey relating to some of the things around COVID, and interestingly, it's leaders who are do feel a little bit of concern about how do I sort of control the workforce, and part of that is really about, as has been already discussed, is we really need to very much have a changed view of what leadership is. And it's not really about the command and control, but much more of this kind of collaborative sort of working, supporting leaders as supporters and coaches and enablers, not as, in this sort of monitoring kind of fashion. And there is a real need to educate leaders in this regard and to reduce some of those perhaps fears, but also to give them skills of working in a very different way. One of the things that we've seen and we've already been discussing is that in an online kind of sort of environment, more of a digital sort of environment, we need to be really more consciously thinking about attending to the social needs of our staff. We actually have to plan and sort of create those opportunities. And this is often an area in leadership development and training that has really not received very much attention about exactly how to do that. So I think it's a very apropos point that we need to definitely to do this and to assist leaders to think about, how to move forward with this. And frankly, themselves to be able to become experts at using the digital tools that are available.
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about often burnout as being kind of a bottom-up problem, but actually we're obviously seeing a lot of our leaders suffering from stress and burnout, equally to the rest of the team. And one of my kind of regular sayings, I suppose, is it's a lot easier to lead if you've got all the information at your disposal. And actually, I think part of our role now as part of a community, part of a team, is to push that information forward, so people have those tools to make good business decisions. We've got another comment, and again, these coming in thick and fast, from Howard. In the UK, the CEO of Barclays Bank has said, "Why would I put 7,000 people in office again? The solution includes scattering staff around the country, working out of redundant bank branch buildings. This will apply to customer service staff and investment banking folk as well. Is this approach that the panel thinks would work for their organizations?" So, Genevieve, it seems like an obvious one for you.
Yeah, this is definitely something that I think most companies should start adapting. I'm sure, like in Cape Town, we've got these virtual offices. So we have what they call workspaces, and it's all over the city. So you can, because it's quite an entrepreneurial city, you have people just plugging and playing wherever they are. And this is something that I think corporations will start using. It used to be more for your startups, just to make sure that they've got some workspace. But this is something that I think that's going to become a lot more, used by the bigger corporations. I think, for example, in our space, instead of me, because I live about 20 Ks, I don't know what that is in miles, from the office. But if I were to go to one of the workspaces close by, I could do exactly the same, have my meetings there. Obviously, in our space, we do have a manufacturing site and we've got our distribution. So in those areas, until those areas are completely automated, we still do need people at those offices. But I do think that getting people to work from where they are and become real digital nomads, that should be the way to go in the future. I wanted to make a comment earlier just around the way we are setting people up. I think we were speaking about one of the comments that we made earlier. I completely forgot it now. I'll come back to it. I completely forgot.
No worries. Just let me know. Derek, I'm going to pass this one over to you now, because university is a really interesting environment for this idea of distribution, right? Because we've had, this history of places like the Open University, which this is exactly how they've worked for years. People have worked from spaces all over the country. Students have worked from all over the country, but the traditional university campus where we get together and it's a different environment. I think people come into that environment with a slightly different set of expectations. So, I mean, how do you see university kind of work changing in the kind of, once we're post-COVID?
Yeah, that's a really good one, isn't it? And I think it's something that's at the forefront of a lot of academics' minds at the moment. And I think quite a lot of us have said previously on this panel that we want to take the best from what we've learned from this experience. And moving forward, I see it as more about being a hybrid approach of meetings, for example. Why not keep some of them online? If it's more optimal to do that, and you can have your more important face-to-face ones that are prioritized, for example, where you actually need those. In terms of teaching, we can take the best from that too, using the remote services that we've learned to use optimally, and the students really enjoy that experience too. And it's a bit more tricky around being able to open up access to compute-intensive environments, but that's where the cloud could come into play, where we start moving more of our compute-intensive and labs such as machine learning, high-performance compute, looking at ways where we can spin up containerized versions of our modules and courses, where students can access those easily via a browser. And they'll also have the choice of coming into the computing labs too, but it's having those options that we didn't have before for the online and the physical approaches to it. So I'm looking forward to seeing where we go with this.
I've missed is the, obviously at the moment we're doing everything we can to support social distancing. I love the pantomime of a big lecture. I love walking in, it's almost gladiatorial, right? Are you not entertained? And I really enjoy that aspect of the job. And there's bits of that experience that I'm looking forward to going back to. But I think you hit on a really interesting point there about choice, right? And by a lot of the things that we see with moving things online is a lot more choice about how we're taking content. You can watch it asynchronously, you can watch it during the session, you can go through a chat, you can again, one of the things that I really want to keep when we move forward is the chat in Teams, because when I'm delivering a large lecture and I say, right, who's got a question, who's got an answer to this, I usually get the same 3 or 4 people every single time. Now I've got this chat column and I'm getting students posting up who I've never heard from before because they're quiet, they're slightly shy, but that gives them just enough kind of security that they feel confident to post. So I'm thinking in my mind now, how do I hold on to that chat when I go back to the Colosseum? How do I keep that interaction? There's been another question come up from Elena. Interesting insights about shaping the future of working, relating and innovating through shared leadership and agility. How can these define the 5th industrial revolution to advance humanity? Oh, that's a broad question. Roman's nodding with confidence, so I'm going to pass over to Roman.
Yeah, that's very lauded. And I think that one of the pertinent features of agile mindset is being very human-centric. So something what we bring to the organization is not just the redesign of the software development process, is the way how we approach work at all. So being human, first of all, and actually create. I know one of my fellow colleague coaches, they have this taglines in their LinkedIn, like humanizing workplaces, because they believe that their mission is just to make places as a better place to work, not just to be another factory. And that Taylorist mindset has already been debunked many, many times. So I think that's the most powerful part of the innovation, and that's fueled by agility, that we don't change things how they work, but also we change the way how people interact, how they work together, how they collaborate. And that's very, very more natural and attractive. And many companies, they use this as the advantage. They use this like to enhance their HR brand. They are saying that we're just a better place to work. Just come to us to experience our wonderful workplace with all the opportunities to collaborate and create together. And it's awesome things. And I have seen them so many here in Singapore. I think the city with the largest density of innovation labs in the world is here. So, and wow, you can experience this. So I don't know how many, it's over more than hundreds for a quite small island, to be honest. So I think that's something that completely redefined the way how we work and the way how we lead teams and lead people. And among agile coaches and agile practitioners, there is a concept of a servant leadership. So we go from having this top-bottom leadership when we tell people what to do, and because we believe that managers know better, but we rely on self-organization and on the fact that we'd like to create an environment or circumstances when people thrive. And we can rely on the fact that they are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. And we don't think that they are in a way inferior or, I don't know, worse than we are as leaders.
And actually, Tracy in the chat has just said something to add to your point. Some organisations are now advertising their vacancies and as work with us, not for us. And I think that kind of emphasises quite a lot of what we've been saying from this session. So there's been another question coming as well from Stuart. How has the panel found or dealt with the challenge importance of large company employee communications and the impact of digital literacy support over the last 9 months? Now, I'm going to pass to Muthu in a second, but we get this with students, right? So one of the things that we are doing in the School of Computer Science is we have 850 students roughly over 3 years. That's a lot of students with a lot of different kind of communication strategies. And, you know, because there's been changes in guidelines and we've been agile, you know, in the way that we've been working, we've been trying to be responsive to needs and changes. We have had a challenge, but actually I would say keeping those communication channels as open as possible and distributing those communication channels as wide as possible has been really useful. We've made massive use of things like our personal tutors and our module coordinators as accessible nodes of communication rather than doing everything top down, but also putting reference materials out there. Now, Muthu, you're in a very large organization. How have you approached this?
Yeah, so that's a great question. When it specifically comes to internal communications, the traditional method of email-based communications existed for a long period of time, but we have been augmenting that. We have a video streaming service established using our own private cloud, and what we've done is in all areas and places where employees come together, be it the large cafeterias or the breakout areas, we have these screens, and these screens actually stream rich video content. And the video content could be related to key leaders talking about important matters or employee recognition rewards. It could be company events. It could be customer testimonials, and they kind of are managed from a centralized location. So nearly 100 offices around the globe can pretty much telecast that, and employees can have a view of that, right? When they want and when they walk in, right? We also have an internal, collaboration software where people can, like how you talked about your chat windows, they can actually go ahead and post their opinions and their feedback, and it's like almost like offline communication that gets to the visibility of the leadership over a period of time. Another important aspect of communication is also about constant feedback. So we are running online employee surveys almost every quarter religiously, and that's on various different topics, and that also comes back to us as to what the pulse of the organization is. So there are multiple methodologies that we deploy, but we are moving very fast from traditional email-based communication to deploying other modern technologies.
Brilliant.
Now one point.
Oh, sorry.
There's just one point that I would like to emphasize, right? In my life, I feel that the establishment of internet, scale-up of internet has been a life-changing experience, right? And more than half the planet is on internet now. And most of the activities that you talk about today are possible because of the scale of this internet, right? You talk about digital commerce, you talk about social media, you talk about online workplaces, you talk about everybody going online, entertainment going online. It's all because of the scale of the internet. And we have believed in the fact in Juniper that connecting the planet and empowering people has been our mission for the last 2 decades. And we are seeing that at play right now, right? Be it smart homes, be it automation, right? That's creeping across the industry. Internet has played a huge role, and we have played a very big role in making that internet scale to where it is today.
Brilliant, thank you. I was just going to pass over that to Genevieve as well, just to get your position.
I think one of the challenges we have, maybe not challenges, but the biggest task on hand as technology leaders, now that we have people working remotely, we need to make sure, because we've spent a lot of time building our back ends, making sure that, we have this amazing systems. what we need to do is make sure that we get designers involved in building that UX. The front end has to be intuitive, because people are becoming a lot more reliant on technology. They don't have the luxury of walking over to your desk to explain what something means or how to access this or how to access that. So I think that's going to become key. Any of the employee applications that needs to be engaged with as an employee will have to be intuitive. It's not just functional in terms of what it needs to do from an operations perspective. It needs to be able to match the human interaction that is required. So I think that was the one point. The other one is that with all the technology that we have going on, I think there is a bit of a fatigue as well. So we've got our town halls where we engage. We actually, when COVID started, there was this need to stay connected with our employees, and our CEO used to have a town hall once a week, just to make sure that he's connecting, to make sure that everyone has the information, where we are, what are our new takes now that, because it was quite, when lockdown just started, our numbers grew substantially, and there were, we went to level 3, level 5, 4, 3, things like that. So we tried to make sure that we were keeping our employees, informed, and that they knew what was happening, and that they didn't sit at home feeling, unsure, uncertain about anything. But I think what's also important is that the communication, it doesn't just stay through technology, that we have to have continuous conversation in person, even if it is, human to human, even if it is on a telephone call. So we need to start using technology to the best of its ability. But there are people, like I've got some people in my team, you've got the normal IT skill person that wants to sit in a corner and develop, and if he doesn't speak to anyone, he's comfortable with that. But you do have people who want that human interaction, and so we do make the option available for people to come in, and we do team get-togethers at a distance, just to make people feel that there is still that connection. So I think those are the type of conversations and the balance that we're going to have to bring towards to make this work better in the future.
Cool, and that actually brings us superbly round to, with that human connection, round to the last question I'm going to pull in before we close down the session. My son-in-law works at a tech company in Netherlands, and they've been working remotely. There is a tradition in the Netherlands called borrel, which is where the whole team gets together in the afternoon and eats cake. I like this idea. How is this the first time I'm hearing about this? In his case, the company sent a box of cakes to everyone at home, and they all did borrel online. How would that work for the panel? And we've got about 3 minutes left, so if everyone just gave us a kind of quick opinion, we'll start with Genevieve.
So we're actually having something similar like that tonight. Maybe it's an IT thing, but my team has a cake day, on a Friday. So it could be an IT thing. But this evening, we've got an awards evening, a virtual awards evening, and each of us was sent, I wish I had the box with me now, each of us was sent a box of snacks, and we'll all be dressing up, and we'll be having our virtual awards evening. So I think it's obviously not exactly the same, like you'll be in person and, all that camaraderie, but I think in light of where we are in the situation, it works.
And Roman?
Yeah, that's something that I've experienced in my company. We have virtual breakfast, virtual lunches, and virtual dinners, and together with drinks parties. So let's have a lot of fun. And something that was very important, I realized is the reason why I like it is that every time when I look at somebody's home, like you are looking at my place, you get to know something about the people you used to work together in just in a physical space. That creates some sort of a bond and connection that you probably never experienced before.
And Sharon?
Yeah, building on what Roman said, I think that we've had sort of just every Friday we have a morning and an afternoon session that's just to drop in. The head and our professional staff are always sort of present, and then people just can pop in for whatever time they want, and some just kind of listen, some sit and chat, and it's never about work stuff. It's about all other sorts of things, sharing recipes, whatever, all sorts of things. And I agree is that this, in fact, I think one of the unexpected kind of benefits of kind of working in this virtual space is that we've actually got to know each other a lot more authentically because that's the thing. And we know authenticity is a really important thing, both for people to be able to bring their authentic selves to work, but also that you feel you are working in an authentic place. And like you were saying earlier, if you've got your child on your knee, or your head sitting there and her cat walks across your computer, you can't get any more authentic than that.
Yes, it's a lovely thought, and we have been doing that in the organization, be it coffee sessions together, drink sessions together. We have encouraged people to do that, encouraged teams to do that. It's well received. It's very well received. And in combination with several other online events that we offer, like virtual yoga sessions, meditation sessions. Invite some well-renowned chefs to kind of teach some nice recipes in one of the Fridays afternoons, online quizzes. So several different things are happening to keep this balance active and going for us, right? And I completely support this.
Brilliant. Derek?
I'll keep it short. For, I guess, my academic colleagues, we have been known to have a few virtual beers after working hours. And those guitars that Chris has got in the background, I've had several sessions sitting with Chris, listening to him strumming on those and me trying to guess the songs. I'm not very good at remembering the latest pop songs or whatever else, but I do have a good attempt at it. And he's pretty good on the guitar too. Not bad at all.
Thanks, Derek. So my one, and I'll close this out while inviting Tars back into the panel. I've been having a lot of my meetings with my research students in video games. So we've been jumping into a video game and we've been doing that in there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, panel. I mean, it's a really insightful, informative discussion today, and there's so many takeaways which I can sort of. I mean, I think for me, the biggest one was around sort of digital transformation and the sort of, how you're really forced to sort of, the leaders have been sort of forced to sort of think about this and accelerate it a lot sooner as a result of the pandemic. And I think this is a challenge for our leaders, and the digital education element where that learning is required, that education is required for our leaders there. I mean, that was just one of many sort of takeaways. I think I'm gonna have to rewatch this again and sort of absorb a lot of this sort of information that was coming out. Very rich content. So yeah, it just leaves me to sort of really say, once again, thank you to our esteemed panel for such a great discussion, and to you, our audience, for your engagement. We've had lots of sort of questions coming through, and love the sort of the interaction there. So, and I'm sorry if we didn't sort of manage to get to all of the questions posted, but we hope it sort of provided you with some real food for thought going forwards. And remember, you can catch up with all of our sort of Resilient Lincolnshire Global series on our channel, on the Lincoln International Business School YouTube channel and Facebook page, and our website there. So from me and from the rest of the panel, we're just going to give you a wave and say thank you very much and goodbye.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.